Angithi ngimayisho no-ex-boyfriend kuyakushisela. But mhlambe intambo zegesi sihlangene so ukushisa ngibona ngathi lana amakhesi okushisa akukho la yakhona. So nora isibhamu basilambe
iyasoleka
nomesi sokuthi so i-backside ama-claims ayibhadali abavuye ebusuku nabo
labantwana labakhe laba nabo imali izobhadala for bona noma
ngeke ibhadale abantwana so ngeke basale ngoba nabo bakhona and uma bangasala kuyeza ama-witness
yonke into engaphakathi
ngeke bayazi ukuthi ikhandlele ushiso i-boyfriend explodeyini endlini or bekashisa into zakhe sasenyangeni zala into.
Hello and welcome to episode 22 of Makeup Mayhem True Crime with me, Bella Monsoon. Miss me? Well, I've been working on some pretty major things, which I'm sure that you guys are going to love, and there's been a lot going on behind the scenes. Today's episode is absolutely bizarre, and I was just waiting for the case to conclude before I delved into it. So if you read the news or follow local social media accounts, I'm pretty sure by now you would have heard of Nomia Rosemary Ndlovu. She is the former constable actually, turned serial killer who pocketed over 1.4 million rand in insurance money after orchestrating the deaths of multiple family members. So if you haven't heard of her, or perhaps you have and just want to learn more, this is a video you're going to want to watch. And after me watching and studying over 30 hours of the trial and news footage, here we are. But before we get into it, for those of you who are new, let me introduce myself. So here it is in a nutshell. I'm a mental health professional who just so happens to be obsessed with makeup, true crime, and uncovering the motives that drive people to do what they do. Every week, I post a brand new video looking at a real-life crime from a psychological viewpoint. Oh, and I also complete a full, easy-to-follow makeup tutorial whilst discussing these cases. During these episodes, I also try to share psychological knowledge and concepts that you may or may not be aware of in an easy-to-understand format. So if all of that sounds like something that you're keen for, then please do consider sticking around. But if makeup and murder is not your thing and you just prefer the true crime, you can also stream my podcast, Murder and Mayhem, South African True Crime, which is available on all major streaming channels. So, as always, just a quick disclaimer for today's story. Today's story contains material citing murder. If you feel triggered by anything you watch in today's video, please do reach out and please speak to someone. You can find a full list of mental health resources available on my website, bellamonsoon.com, no matter where in the world you are situated. I mean, absolutely no disrespect to the victims mentioned nor their families. The purpose of this video is to shed further light on these absolutely shocking crimes while spreading awareness about the psychological nature of the narrative. This case has been thoroughly researched by myself and includes real-life accounts, videos, and footage from individuals who were involved directly in the case. And so, with that, on to episode 22. Our story begins in 1975. In the rural area of New Forest in Bushbuckridge. This is the year that Nomia Rosemary Ndlovu is born. Honestly, even after watching over 30 hours of news and court footage, I was still not able to ascertain much about her early life. All I did discover was that she did indeed grow up in the area of Bushbuckridge, and her family was not very wealthy, so she always dreamed of having money. I did, however, discover some pretty bizarre information in regards to her life just a few years before the murders began, but I will save that for later on in the episode as it'll make a lot more sense then. So, around the age of 18, Rosemary had begun dating, and shortly after that, she had moved to the big city of Johannesburg. It was here that she began to get involved in police work. But what we all do know for sure is that she was a constable at the Tembisa South Police Station in the East Rand from the time that it opened in 2014. However, we need to kind of go back 2 years prior to the opening of the police station, as that is when the chaos began. It started in 2012 and the murders would span 6 years up until 2018. It's unclear how the initial idea to start murdering came to Rosemary, but ultimately all that matters is that it did. The first murder that was able to be proven, at least, was her cousin, witness Madala Homu, in 2012. Prior to his murder, she had insured him with various insurance companies and listed him as her spouse. She had then hired a hitman for the job. When people started to realize that witness was missing, she even joined in the search party with his brother Godfrey. She also apparently searched records for him at her place of work, the Tembisa police station. His body was discovered on the 1st of April in 2012 with severe head injuries. After his death, she had submitted several claims to various insurance companies, and she ended up being paid out 131,000 rand. 31,000 rand was from Old Mutual and 100,000 rand was from Hollard. And do you want to know what her contribution to the funeral was? She bought groceries. And after the funeral, she had given his mother, Lucy Moshwana, 15,000 rand. After that, apparently his mother had asked for more money once she had found out that there was an insurance policy on her son's life. Rosemary, of course, did not plan on giving her 1 more cent. So with this first murder, Rosemary was really just warming up. And the next murder she plotted was one that hit even closer to home. Her target was her own sister, Audrey Somisa Ndlovu. It was June of 2013, and the murder this time was a lot more personal for Rosemary. She had gone to Audrey's house and poisoned her with a tea that was mixed with a harmful substance. She had then left her home to only return later and discover that Audrey was still alive. This was not going to work, and so she strangled Audrey herself. Prior to Audrey's death, however, she had phoned the insurance companies pretending to be Audrey, and she had made herself, Rosemary, the beneficiary of Audrey's insurance policies. Audrey's body was only discovered much later, and it was already decomposing. Rosemary had then tampered with evidence at the scene of the crime, washing 2 teacups that Audrey had drank from, as 2 policemen noted. After Audrey's death, she claimed over 717,000 rand in insurance money. So one would imagine that almost 750,000 rand later, that Rosemary would be done. But oh no, her murder spree was far from over. From her sister, she moved straight on to her boyfriend and lover, Yingwani Maurice Mabasa. Her plan was finally executed in 2015. At this point in time, the couple had been dating and living together for 4 years. And he was also the father of their little girl, whom they had conceived out of wedlock. It is, however, alleged that the pair were in an abusive relationship, and that he had also cheated death twice before, not being so lucky the 3rd time. So Rosemary one day had inquired about his insurance premiums, and not more than 2 weeks later, he was dead. Yeah, no, that's kind of sus. On the 14th of October 2015, his body was discovered near the Olifantsfontein police station with more than 80 stab wounds. You know what's strange though? His attackers didn't even bother to take his wallet or his money. And it was via this exact wallet that his body was identified when he was found. Yeah, just a coincidence, right? After his death, Rosemary claimed around 416,000 rand in insurance payouts. She had then used 40,000 rand of this money to arrange his funeral. Oh, how gracious of her. In addition to the payouts she received, she also received maintenance for their child on behalf of Maurice's employers, the American Embassy. A trust fund account had been opened and she got a payout of around 760 rand per month until the child's untimely death in 2016. More on that later. In 2016, the following year, she was back at it. This time, her victim was her niece, Zanele Mota. She took out multiple policies for her from the period of January to May of 2016. Then, in June, she had invited Zanele to stay at her home for 2 weeks. 2 days before Zanele's death, she was actually treated at Tembisa Hospital for scratches and bruises after being hit by a bicycle. And just 48 hours later, Zanele was found on the side of the road with injuries so severe that she was rendered unable to speak, along with fractured ribs and a damaged liver. She unfortunately succumbed to her injuries. Following Zanele's death, Rosemary had received around 119,840 rand from 3 different policies that she had taken out on her life. But once again, Rosemary did not assist with the funeral or the burial costs of her niece. And the very next year, she had moved on again to, of course, another family member. This time, it was her nephew, Mayeni Mashaba. And it was April of 2017 that she had him murdered. His body was found in Olifantsfontein with major head injuries. Later cell phone records would place him and Rosemary in the same location around the time of his death. It's unknown, however, whether there were policies that were taken and claimed in his name. And like clockwork, the very next year, Rosemary was at it again. The year was 2018, and she had set her eyes on yet another one of her nephews. The victim would be Brilliant Mashega, who was Audrey's son. Remember Audrey? So what had happened was Rosemary had apparently taken him under her wing, and she had promised to help him find work, etc., etc., but all these years later, he had finally found out about the insurance payouts that Rosemary had received after claiming on Audrey's life. Once he found out, he had demanded a share in it. I mean, it was his mother, after all. But that was clearly never going to happen, though. He was last seen with Rosemary on the 22nd of January, 2018. Brilliant's body was found on the street with massive head injuries 2 days later. She had taken between 2 and 4 policies on his life, but it's unclear whether she ever received the funds from these claims. So throughout the years that she had orchestrated these murders, she was said to have been incredibly generous with her colleagues, even helping out those who were broke on many occasions. She was close to all of her colleagues, and she would often buy them lunch, and they recalled that she always had a lot of money. Her colleagues, however, maintained that she was an ordinary woman, and that there seemed to be nothing strange going on in her life. They did, however, mention that when, if ever, she was broke, this upset her incredibly, and it was the first and last thing that she would always mention. The motive for these murders was simple. Rosemary wanted money, and she would do anything in her power to get it. And so she took out multiple life insurance policies on the victims, and cashed them in as soon as their death certificates were available. Although these were the successful murders that there was evidence and witnesses to, Rosemary had also attempted to kill other family members, albeit unsuccessfully. The hitman, who would be instrumental in her capture and arrest later on, had alleged that Rosemary had hired him to kill her sister Gladys in 2017. Gladys had lived in Tembisa at the time. The hitman had told his friend Makeze about this, as he was quite shocked by the request at the time. In the end, they had both headed off to Gladys's house to execute the murder. Rosemary had allegedly promised them 15,000 rand for her sister Gladys's life, to be paid after her death, of course, and she had given them 800 rand up front as payment for petrol. The two, however, had taken this money and they had not gone through with the assassination and had also just avoided Rosemary from that point on. Next up on Rosemary's hit list was her own mother. Yes, her very own mother was not even safe from her evil plans. Rosemary had taken out many insurance policies in her mother's name, and she gave the hitman Lakiwe Makezi 2,600 rand to kill her. However, he had entered the mother's home, and seeing this old, fragile, vulnerable woman in front of him, he was not able to go through with the assassination. He had instead asked for a glass of water, and he had left. This failed attempt infuriated Rosemary. And it just so happened that it was her last target, or targets rather, that would be her downfall. She had then plotted and planned to have Joyce Ndlovu and her children burnt in their Bushbuck Ridge home in Mpumalanga. She had even called her sister early in the morning on the day of the hits to gather intel on her neighbors to ascertain whether anyone would be there to help. This intel also helped her to orchestrate the best time for the hit. Her sister suspected nothing. She just thought Rosemary was checking in on her because she cared. However, the hitman that she had hired was shocked by her vicious request. Rosemary had allegedly told him that she wanted her sister dead because her sister was going to expose her for selling confiscated weapons to criminals. Injabula Kunene, who was the assassin, actually met Rosemary back in 2011 when he was arrested for unlawful possession of a firearm. But back to his shock and horror. He was disgusted at the fact that the youngest victim that he would be paid to murder was only 7 months old. So he didn't go through with it. When he didn't complete the killing, Rosemary was evidently upset, and she suggested that her sister be lured to a bar in Kempton Park where her drink could be spiked and then she could be strangled. However, her request fell on deaf ears. Kunene turned out to be a killer with some form of conscience, and he reported Rosemary to the police. Within days, a swift undercover operation was set up, and that would reveal a plan in a video that would go viral on social media.
Marugwaza nokudubula ayikho emakhaya yabona ukushiza number 1 nokuhamba number 1 zona lezi
Umntwana umama noma yini
umama sisizwe banga angathi uye nabantwana bakhe bayi5 5 labantwana nalo mama khona bancane abantwana bakhona nomunye una ngathi na akakaqedi no1 year nomunye ngathi na 3 years nomunye 7 years angithi indumayisho ex-boyfriend kuyawutshisela but mhlambe intambo zegesi zihlangene so ukushisa ngibona ngathi lana amakhesi ukushisa akukho la yakhona so nora isibhamu basilande
iyasoleka
nomesi so uthi so i-bedside ama-claims ayibhadali abavuye ebusuku nabo
labantwana labakhe laba nabo imali izobhadala for bona noma
ngeke ibhadale abantwana izobhadala so ngeke basale ngoba nabo bakhona and uma bangasala uyazi ama-witness
yonke into engaphakathi
ngeke bayazi ukuthi ikhandlele ushiso i-boyfriend explodeyini endlini or bekashisa into zakhe sasinyangeni zala.
The footage was captured by an undercover police officer who hid the camera in the car he was traveling in with Rosemary and the other hitman. The trio were headed to Bushbuck Ridge, where Rosemary was going to point out her sister's home and also tell them how to complete the murders. In her own words, she had said, "Leave no witnesses behind." After stopping to buy the petrol that would be used to burn her sister and her children inside of the house, Rosemary had stated that the family must not be shot. She said that stabbing or shooting would raise suspicion, and she needed it to look like an accident for the insurance claim. The men were to drug the family with the tablets that she had provided and then set them alight. And yes, she was that nonchalant about the whole thing. The children had to die because she had to eliminate any witnesses. Rosemary also had the perfect alibi, as she was booked into the Karstenhof Hospital and she had arranged a day pass from one of the nurses. Thus, she was going to take a taxi back to the hospital and act as though she had been there the whole time. So, right after this infamous video was recorded, Rosemary asked to be dropped back at the taxi rank so she could obviously go to the hospital. However, when she arrived at the taxi rank, she was greeted by police officers who immediately arrested her. She was in custody from March of 2018 up until her trial began in September 2021, and she was not granted bail. Heading into the trial in September of 2021, she faced 20 charges, including murder, fraud, obstruction of justice, and conspiracy to commit murder. In the weeks and months that followed, the case would go from shocking to even more bizarre, as Rosemary's behavior would make headlines. So I'm sure you might be wondering at this stage why her face in particular was splashed across newspapers and social media. I mean, every day people are murdered not only in South Africa, but worldwide, and their faces don't always make the newspapers. But here's why she did. To begin with, she was a police officer, a constable to be precise. Thus, she was in a place of authority and her job was literally to protect society. But here she was, orchestrating murders and hiring hitmen. So, if that wasn't enough, she was a she. The fact is, female offenders are not as common as male offenders. It's not to say that you don't find female offenders, you just don't find them as often. And female serial killers, well, there's really just a handful of them that are known, that is, especially within South Africa. Yeah, I'm looking at you, Charmaine Phillips. And lastly, her victims were not strangers. They were her family. She committed familicide multiple times. So yeah, she kind of hit the trifecta when it came to shocking crimes. And in addition to all of this, her behavior during the trial would further guarantee her infamy. Over the course of her arrest and her first court appearance, Rosemary's behavior was absolutely absurd. Her overall demeanor throughout court proceedings, which lasted around 3 months, was overall not one of someone who had been accused of orchestrating multiple murders of their family members. She was so nonchalant about these charges. She was more interested in the media that was present and performing. In videos and images that were shared across social media, she is seen placing her hands on her hips, pulling up peace signs, fanning herself, and checking whether the press were happy with the pictures they were taking of her. She told them that she had even put on makeup for them, joking in her native tongue, "Who knew Rosemary Ndlovu would one day be a celebrity?" I mean, at one point, she was even flirting with a journalist, telling him he was cute. Oh, and then on another day, she walked to take the stand at about 1 kilometer per hour, like someone whose knees were unable to bend. So, after her erratic behavior and her social media fame, she was summoned to wear leg irons or shackles in court. It wasn't but a few days later when Rosemary claimed that she felt dizzy and ill during proceedings, and she said that the shackles were too painful and they were making her feet swell. She had said, "The leg irons around my legs are tight, making my temperature rise, and I'm in pain. I'm not sure I can testify in this manner." The judge presiding over the case, Judge Monama, had no choice but to postpone the court session. On the way back to the police van after this postponement, however, Rosemary miraculously regained her energy, throwing food at the journalist who tried to film her getting into the van. During her trial, there were over 30 witnesses who were called to the stand. Joyce, her sister, and her last target, to this day, is in disbelief over why Rosemary would even want to kill her and her children. Her children are also aware of the attempt that occurred on their lives, and it plagues their sense of security and peace of mind to this day. Rosemary's mother, however, jumped to her defense and denied any claims that there was a hitman in her home at any stage in time. She also further went on to say that she does not fear for her life in any way or form. She also testified in her daughter's defense, saying that she was heartbroken by the affairs surrounding Rosemary. I guess a mother's love can also be a mother's blindness. During testimony in September, Rosemary alleged and went on to maintain that she was coached by one of the men that she had hired to carry out the assassination. You know, the one that there is video evidence of her orchestrating? Yeah, apparently she was told to say what she said in that video. She also went on to blame the insurance companies for mixing up information in regards to the first murder where she had recorded her cousin as her spouse. Throughout the trial, she showcased a lack of empathy, only breaking down once when discussing the death of her lover and boyfriend. She testified as to how she had been so saddened to hear about his passing, as they had identified his body from the ID found in his wallet. She also, on multiple occasions, accused 30-plus state witnesses of lying. The prosecution, however, was able to produce evidence that showcased that Rosemary was either the last person to see the victims alive or the first person to notice they were missing in every single case. She was also nominated the beneficiary on all of their policies, of course, and she was the recipient of all the money after their untimely deaths. She was found guilty of not only all 6 murders, but also of defrauding Usapol, Clientele Limited, One Life Insurance, and Old Mutual, as well as defeating the ends of justice, incitement to commit murder, and the attempted murder of her mother, Maria Mushwana. She then had to wait several weeks for sentencing. During this time, she attempted to appeal her conviction. The judge, however, was not having it. He had said that she had soiled the police's blue uniform and tainted the reputation of her colleagues. This did not sit well with her. During her sentencing, at one point, Rosemary broke down, apologizing for the losses that her relatives had suffered. She said that she will accept any decision as she felt great sadness and pain for the relatives that had passed on. However, minutes later, after being told by the judge that she would be sentenced to life behind bars, she snapped and told the very same people just what she thought of them. She said, and I quote, particularly directed to the mother of Blessing Mashaba, who now looks after his young child, "I will spend Christmas in jail, but next year I will be out. I will be back, and you will see." She said this in a threatening tone, pointing to the family members as she spoke. She was completely unperturbed by the media who caught this entire exchange on camera. And I feel like that pretty much sums up her entire attitude during the trial. She received 6 life sentences, 1 for each murder. She received 5 years for her attempt on her sister Joyce and her children. For tampering with the crime scene of her sister's murder, she received 5 years. She was also handed 5 years in each of the 4 counts of fraud that she was accused of. She was also sentenced to 10 years for the attempted murder of her own mother. Rosemary, during and after sentencing, still went down, maintaining that she did not kill, plan to kill, or defraud anyone. But do you want to hear something absolutely crazy? More crazy than everything you've heard thus far. It came to light during proceedings that there was almost a cloud of death that followed Nomia Rosemary Ndlovu. Let me explain. Criminologist Almeria Myberg told the court that Rosemary had begun dating when she was 18. She had then married her lover, but he had died strangely in 2004. They had also had a son together, Jaunty, who had died when he was only 13 years old. Crazy ladies say, what? A visit to the area where Rosemary had grown up in also had the locals talking about the suspicious circumstances of her previous husband's death. He had apparently died after falling ill, whilst their son had died from suspected poisoning after he had gone to Johannesburg to visit his mother, Rosemary. Yeah, no, that's definitely sus. After his death, Rosemary had dated a few different men, but then she had met Maurice Mabasa. After they had moved in together, she had fallen pregnant. After Maurice's untimely death, their child Makanani had lived with Maurice's mother for several months until one day Rosemary had just shown up and wanted to take the child for the weekend. The child was in hospital before the end of the following week, and she died a few days later. A toxicology report could not conclude what had killed her, and she was only 2 years old at the time. If you've heard of the story of Daisy DeMalka, this case is so reminiscent of that case. She, if I'm remembering correctly, was the very first female serial killer within South Africa, and she was also known for poisoning and murdering her family and spouses for insurance money. I actually covered that case in detail a few months back, and you can find it up here. The motive is clear. The attitude is obvious. So the question is, does Rosemary have any remorse whatsoever? Tanya Stain, a body language expert who analyzed Rosemary's behavior during court appearances, concluded that Rosemary has a grandiosa personality. Tanya said that she displayed so many red flags that alluded to her not telling the truth, from her constantly pursing her lips to closing her eyes when she spoke. After analyzing her breakdown in court when she spoke about her lover's death, Tanya said that Rosemary initially showed the micro expressions of real sadness. However, she soon realized the attention she was getting and inflated her reaction to put on a show. She thrives off of receiving attention and was using powerful poses for the camera, with her hands on her hips, and her hands in the air. The idea of the power that she felt really translated to all aspects of her life. Whilst in the Johannesburg prison awaiting trial, she attempted to order a hit on the investigating officer, Keshi Mabunda. She was then moved to Kgosi Mampura Correctional Center, a maximum security facility. After she was sentenced, though, she requested to move back to the Johannesburg prison. Her power and pull had come to an end. It was concluded that because she was not remorseful in the least for what she had done, her risk to reoffend was high. She remains a danger to society. The families of her victims say that she deserved a severe sentence. Her community from New Forest in Bushbuckridge were fearful of the possibility of her returning. Her sister Joyce, however, has forgiven Rosemary, but says that she doesn't ever think she can trust her again. She loves her still, though, and hopes that time behind bars will help Rosemary to change her ways. But that may not be very likely, and here's why. The official criminologist report classifies Rosemary as a serial killer. Although she had not killed the victims herself, she had orchestrated their murders, showing no remorse, which signaled that there may be the possibility of a personality disorder at play. This was further illustrated by her behavior throughout the murders and the trial, with her displaying a complete lack of empathy. She was recommended to engage in the currently available violent offender programs, as there are no rehabilitation programs currently available for serial killers within South Africa. She was also advised to engage in psychotherapy with a psychiatrist. So, although she was not classified as having any particular disorder, such as psychopathy, Professor Gerard Labuschagne believes that this might be an avenue that needs to be explored. Essentially, a psychopath would be classified as someone who has a lack of remorse, superficial charm, and an overall consistent need to always get what they want, amongst other criteria. Yes, I know, sounds like your ex-boyfriend or your boss, right? However, in all seriousness, it is a disorder that needs to be diagnosed by a professional. As I discussed in a previous episode, the presence of a mental disorder doesn't mean that the responsibility of the crime is absolved from the accused. Many serial killers, even some with a diagnosed mental disorder, are found fit to stand trial, their mental disorder not playing a part within the crimes they committed. Many serial killers, even some with a history of mental illness, have been found fit to stand trial, their disorder not playing a direct role in the murders that they committed. With Rosemary, there was no evidence of a mental disorder directly influencing and impacting her daily life and functioning. So besides the outrageous act that was put on during the trial, this was not an avenue that was followed, for now at least. And so we've reached the Bella bottom line. Nomia Rosemary Ndlovu was described as a vulture, preying upon her innocent and unsuspecting family members. Her very existence in relation to the crimes that she committed highlights a real and terrifying fear, that the person you have reason to fear the most is the person right under your nose, the person who is in your home, the person who is part of your family. Rosemary appeared to be a normal, generous, and well-loved woman. But beneath this facade, she was a cruel, calculating, and cunning killer, methodically and nonchalantly planning the demise of those closest to her. And in her warpath, no one was safe. Until next time, please stay safe, stay blessed, and stay the amazing human beings that I really hope you all are.